Alright, so a little bit happened since yesterday. You can see I put the clamps back on. Kind of got in here and I saw it. I knew that epoxy wasn't all the way cured because it's only 70 degrees. Today it's only about 65, 70. So I saw it maybe pulling away here a little bit, or it just didn't look like it was as tight as it was. So especially here in where all this arc is, I went ahead and put the clamps back on. Everything feels solid. I was actually up here this morning where I pulled some fillets up underneath here. Just kind of helped strengthen that, where you can see I was able to take my little scraper and just clean off all that little excess up underneath there. I did get this piece right here put together. This will be for the eyelet, so I screwed it together through my pilot holes, so whenever I get ready to put it in here, I can place it where I want it, and then use those same screws to epoxy it in place, and then come back and drill those out, and that'll actually be the holes that the eye bolt, that the bow eye goes through. So it's probably going to be somewhere right in here. We'll get it all centered up, but that's if I get a batch of epoxy made, I may go ahead and stick that in place. But what I'm gonna try and do now is I'm gonna start putting in these floor supports. I've contemplated this. What I'm gonna do is probably run this on time lapse, but I'll describe it first. Is I'm gonna run my 3/4 boards lengthwise, like even there where those cross members go. I'm gonna go ahead and run it the whole way, epoxy it in place, get it affixed. Then I can just make 2 cuts at each one of those holes with that little multi-tool, and it'll pop it right on out of there. So rather than having to glue in 9 pieces, I can just make 12 cuts, and I'd make 12 cuts. But I'm gonna start on that. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start back here in the stern. I'm gonna take my little 2-foot level, and I'm gonna put it in there and mark the bottom. First thing I'm gonna do is probably come in here and try and sand the tops of all these tops. Sand all these tops right here. Just make sure there's no burrs, because that's all gonna affect it. It'll all have thickened epoxy, so it's all gonna kind of work itself out. And once again, this is in the stern, in the transom, so it won't be that big a deal. 2 screw ups. Number one, I had just put this fiberglass in and wet it out yesterday when I drilled these holes. So all of that sawdust and all is now in there, stuck to that. So thankfully that's in this part of the boat, and it shouldn't cause an issue. I'm probably come back in here and sand it. I'm gonna probably I may coat this whole transom area anyway. So I'm gonna probably come in here and sand that up, rough it, and I don't know if I'm gonna fair it, if I'm gonna just paint it like it is. But then also that, like when you saw me stacking the epoxy and all in there, and so that's all set up. I was pushing it in there, but when I pulled the stuff off this morning, you can see, let me give you a side view so you can see I didn't get it all the way packed up in there. So today I'm gonna come back and pack this off this way. So I think it's important to show this for a lot of people that want to do this after they've glassed their hull. If I had this to do again, what I would do is I would come in here and pack this side lightly, then put my board on, and I would also use packing tape and not just masking tape. That masking tape kind of stuck to it, and I know that packing tape won't. But I would put a little thickened epoxy on this side, then put your covering board, and then go on the other side and pack it in real nice, and you should get a good finish. And that's kind of what I'm gonna work on today. All of this corner gusset and all, where I brought this shear clamp, all that kind of came together real nice, and we'll come back and we'll plane all this off, and it should all look real good. So all that did fine. But I'm gonna start, like I said, I'm gonna start just laying out where this will not be a deck, because you won't ever walk back here, but there'll be a hatch right here, but it will be a cover to put in place. So I'm gonna start laying all that out, at least marking it back here. I still gotta think through it, but I'm actually start installing them all up in there. So that's what I'm trying to do today. There's a pretty lengthy intro there. So as you can see here, I've just got my little orbital sander, and all I started out trying to do was just to sand that top 2 inches or so of all of those stringers, so because that's where that deck bracing is all going to be glued to. And then I actually realized, well, no, if I'm sanding, I might as well go ahead and sand everything. So that's where you can see me here in the transom. I'm probably going to put some total builds by total boat, and paint that whole transom area, just because I want it to look good. I'm not sure if I'm going to ferret yet or not, like especially in the motor well, but in the other parts I won't, but I may paint it all. And then all I'm doing is I've decided while I'm sanding, I'm going to go ahead and sand everything, and you can see here where I sand all the way around all of those compartments. Now I don't sand all those compartments, just the top couple of inches is all I'm trying to get to, which is where we're going to have epoxy glue and all that floor bracing in. But I just as I got to sanding, you see I went ahead and I had my respirator on and all that, so I just sanded everything that I could. And now you can see me, I've got that 12-inch level, and I'm just making sure that to lay out where the floor bracing is going to be. Now just keep in mind that the boat as it sets is plumb port to starboard, but it's not level bow to stern. It's actually the bow's quite a bit higher than the stern, and that's so as I'm working in here, I can work on fair, and I can work on level, like I said, port to starboard. And you saw me there, like trying to mark out where those outside floor braces will be, and I'll touch on that later, where I show how that all went. It was actually a whole lot easier than I thought it was going to be, and I'll show you how I used the clamps and all to get that put in there. So that's right now all I'm doing is I'm getting all my stock pulled together. That's it. You can see it right there. I had it all trimmed and ready to go. And so now I've left my miter saw and all in the carport because it's threatening to rain. It actually did rain a lot this morning, so you can just see here how I'm gonna put them in. And all I'm doing now is I actually wind up just screwing them in place, so that whenever I do go to epoxy them, I can use those screw holes for alignment. Just go right back in the same screw holes. All the pieces are labeled, and it'll just make it easier to put them in there without clamps and whatnot. So that's what my plan is here, and I'm gonna let this run. You can just see how I put all these things, all of these braces, and I got a lot of it done, and it really changes the way the boat looks. This here would be a good example. You see me come back and just sit there and look, and I'm steady thinking, and I could be thinking about moves that are 15 things ahead of what I'm trying to do right now, but just trying to realize, okay, if I do this, then how's that going to affect that, and do I need to fix this now, or can I plan for that now, or what? And so but this is just me in there. Like I said, I had one little drill set up there to drill pilot holes, because I didn't want to split any of that stock lumber. So I would drill pilot holes and then just put the screws in there to hold them in place. And like I said, I just come back and cut all these. But I go ahead and get all the center ones done. As you'll see, I'm gonna give you a little hint. You'll see me avoiding those outside ones. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about it there, but yeah, let me go on and just do something else, because I'm nervous about how they're gonna go in and how I'm gonna do it. So I just avoid it, and I've been kicking this can down the road. And then, like everything else that has with this project, I've never done this before, so there's things that I'm just nervous about or not sure how to do it, so I avoid them. And then when it comes time, and I just face them and say, okay, look, we got to do it. It's never as bad as what I thought it was. I hope that trend keeps up, but you just got to face the challenges, and it's wood and epoxy, and God forbid if the worst thing I have to do is come back and I can cut out whole pieces of wood and glue it back in place. That's the beauty of dealing with wood and epoxy and fiberglass. So I just wanted to share that part as well. So I'm finally facing this challenge, and I wound up just clamping that level to those floor braces that I already had in, and then those outside ones against the hull there. You can see it pretty clearly here, and I think I show this again later because it was something that, like I said, it was in my mind, it was a really big thing of how to get it done. And I'm glad that I did it this way, because on that forward one there's a lot more rake and twist and all in that board than you would imagine. So you see I just clamped that level, because I know that level's straight, and I just clamp it to those other 4 joists, and then I just bring that one up there, screw it, and I just keep moving the level down. I didn't do each end, because then you could have a hump in the middle or a swell. So where every screw was, I would clamp it on there, pull it up to it, and attach it. And then I also marked all of those screw holes from the outside, like if there was any penetration or anything on the outside, to make sure that I come back and fill those. Because once this thing's glued on there and I come back on the outside, and I'll fill all those holes with thickened epoxy right before we fiberglass, and it'll all be just as solid as if it was all wood and never had a hole in it. It's another reason that you see me screwing a lot of stuff together, is that it, whenever I back those screws out and I glue it, that screw hole is going to help me align exactly the way that it is right now. When I don't have glue all over my hands and gloves and everything else, it's just going to be easier. I mean, clamps will probably work and they may work better, but at least that's my plan in thinking about doing it this way. Yeah, and here's another example. This is kind of right up in your face. Not the best, videography, but you'll see, especially when I go to do this other side over here, you see I'm just drilling my screw holes, my little pilot holes about 12 inches, and I'm using these little pocket hole screws, because they're not tapered like wood screws. So with those tapered heads, as you screw them tight, it wants to split the wood. But because these pocket hole screws they don't have threads all the way to the top, so that allows them to spin and pull tight. But it also has like a bigger washer head on them, and a flush head, like a pan head, so that it doesn't. All this will be below the deck, so it really doesn't matter. But it doesn't affect the wood as bad. And also, all of these pocket hole screws have a square driver bit, and to me, once you get that thing in there, it doesn't twist. There's no risk of stripping it out or anything like that. So that's why I like to use them as well. Not to mention, I have a lot of them. Okay, so when I go to do this side, you'll see I'm going to start in the bow, and you can see that I'm going to actually angle it up, because there is the way that boat twists and on. This is where it starts coming to the V right in front of that, or right behind that transverse bulkhead. You'll see that this is just a little piece of 3/4 by 3/4 Douglas fir, but you'll see that it's got a lot of rake and twist and turn in it. You can see the one closest, you can see how much swale is in it, but then you'll see how much vertical up and down that thing is twisted, getting through there to stay flush with the top, just because you got all those angles and all coming together. And that's what had me so nervous to start with. But being able to using this level, or this straight edge, it could be anything as long as it's straight and rigid enough to handle some pressures. Like you'll see it here, you can see it's at least 1 inch high in the back, and that's just from putting 2 screws. So I'm pushed down on it, got all my stuff, my screws in already, and then you can see once I just drive that thing through there, and now I know, like I've taken that level, and you'll see me going all over it. When I go to put that floor in there, it's going to be perfectly level, port to starboard, and it's going to be fair with whatever the angle is from stern to bow. And here I use the same principle, putting these boards in this aft section. Now underneath here, like all the way there on the port side, is where a live release well will be, and the center is a live well, and then as you can see here, I just come back. I went and got my skill saw. That little blade from cutting that fiberglass and stuff on that multi-tool is just dull. You just got to be careful with running the skill saw in there, because when that 3/4 breaks, it's real easy for it to get wedged in there. So you got to be real careful that stuff doesn't go flying, or you're prepared for any kickback or anything like that from the saw. So be very careful doing that part. A multi-tool is the safest way to do it, or even a jigsaw. You know, you could hand saw that, it wouldn't be that much. But here they go in, and I'm going to show you that a problem that I had right there in the front. I'm going to talk about that here in a little while, but it just amazes me that how much the boat changed in the way that it looks on the inside. And I did have to take that multi-tool right there and just kind of clean out those holes a little bit. And this one I actually had to cut out again, and I'll talk about that in a little while. Alright, here in the bow, I told you I was going to try and get it done if I made some epoxy. Well, this is where the bow eye will be. And so those two screws that are actually going through there, I drilled those out. Maybe too dark to see, but they come out. Yeah, it may just be too dark. They come out pretty much right on the center line. What'll be the center line. So we'll be able to use those holes to drill out the to over drill that, to be able to encapsulate that in epoxy. So I got that done, and I'm gonna walk back here. And this is kind of a milestone here. Been talking about getting this deck supports and all in. Spent all day today kind of getting them all in. Let me show that. So I also got back here, remember we had these over drills for the stern eyes I showed you earlier. Let the light adjust a little bit, but I came back and made some epoxy and cleaned that up. Same thing over here, came back and see if the light will adjust, and made some more thickened epoxy when I did that bow eye, and I came back and smoothed these out. So both of those are done. So here's all the decking in. Looks a whole lot different with all that up in there. So now all I have to do is measure the floor out, find center line, measure from the sides. I hope that you could see it, like these sideboards, the ones that run the hull, like this one and that one. I was real freaked out about how to do that, but the easiest thing to do is, once you get all the other ones in, put a level or a straight edge across there, and then just pick your board up to the bottom of it. Because it's on the hull, it's a little rotated, or it's not square, like it's not 90 degrees, and there's no way to cut that. For me, it's not worth it. I'll just fill that edge with epoxy. But just put your level across the top, and you'll see where I use some clamps. I'll try and highlight it somewhere, or maybe put a little window over here and show you, or over here. but you just put a level across there, and then you just pick your board up to it, put a screw, and I did it in 3 or 4 different places and walked it all the way back, and I feel really good about now whenever I go to put the deck on, it's going to be perfectly level all the way across. So as I was working through all these, like my level was dead mid-bubble, so felt pretty good. Here's another little something that, you know, other people may run into. You know, don't freak out. So I'm going to put these timbers in here. This one was offset that way, so I had to come back and cut it a little more on this side so that it would get in there. Otherwise it was all cattywampus and I couldn't get it to go in there. I think this one, you can see it's not entirely square straight going across there, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to come back. I've got all my measurements, and I'm going to cut and put a little 3/4 by 3/4 on the ends, on both ends, and back here, and then in the next compartment, just so that, you know, as you're walking across here, that gives that plywood something else. Even though it's all going to be fiberglass and bonded and all that, that's not going to hurt anything. I don't think it'll use that much lumber either. So that's what she looks like today. See if we can get it. I don't know if you can see that, but it looks quite a bit different. You know, so obviously you probably saw in the time lapse, it's the first time I think I got up in the boat, and you know, it's hard to tell anything because it's in the cradle, but all feels good. So, and there's all the clamps. Took all the clamps off the shear, so I'll be ready to start shaping it as well. I don't know if I'm going to shape it before I flip or after, but to me, getting these in, or getting these fit like I have, now I need to start running my piping and all through here. Probably won't foam or anything, probably won't even run the piping, but at least I've got all of this stuff in here. I got a lot of figuring out to do. I think I'm really ready, getting ready to flip it. And then oh, you also saw I went through and I sanded everything that's going to have to be faired, everything that's going to be glued. Like I sand, you know, the way I figured, if I got to sand, I just soon sand all I can. If I'm going to itch, I just want to itch one day and not multiple days. So as you saw, I came in here and sanded all the way around every box, you know, with that 5-inch orbital, just to rough it all up, so whenever I do get ready to epoxy this in, it's got a good bond. You'll see that I use screws to hold those other boards in there. To me, it's just going to be easy because I knew the way I did it, the way I had to cut those out. And so now I was able to use one board across all the way there, and then I just cut it, and cutting it is really easy. So, and I feel comfortable with the saw. So this one here, because I couldn't get in there, I'll clamp it whenever it comes time. It'll be clamped flush. So that's kind of it. It's another little milestone here. So we got to figure out what to do next. I still have these forward compartments here to do. That'll be next after I put all my little the little end pieces on, and then just keep moving forward. We appreciate y'all watching, and hit that subscribe button, and feel free to comment with any questions. We really appreciate it.